ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहेवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्रचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ verse 229. चिदाभासे स्वतः कोऽपि ज्वरो नास्ति यतश्चितः प्रकाशैकस्वभावत्वम् एव दृष्टं न चेतरत्. So Vidyaranya has come to the final part of this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad mantra 4.4.12 Atmanam chet vijaniya tayamasmiti purusha Kimichan kasya kamaya shariramanu. And in this mantra, he has come to the last part, that is shariramanu sanjvaret. That is indicating a jnana phalam, indicating a shoka nivrutti, the cessation of the sorrow. And that is has been told in terms of freedom from anujvara. So Vidyaranya is explaining that part. Jvaraha means a fever. Upanishad of course uses this word in sense of any ailment. Jvara also, the fever, is an ailment or sickness, problem with respect to the sthula sharira, fever. But here it is not just that thing, It is mentioned here only in the form of a, not sthula sharira, but also the jvara which are born of all the three bodies. So in verse 224 he mentions Sthula Sharira Jvara. In verse 225 mentions Sukshma Sharira Jvara. And in verse 226 he mentioned Karana Sharira Jvara. And thereafter he made some general remarks regarding this Jvara. First, all the Shariras have one or other Jvara, problem, suffering. This Jvara word, if I won't translate properly, you will, whole class is over, then you will say, what is that Jvara? So therefore, Jvara means a problem, suffering, pain, pertaining to any body. So he made these general remarks. First is, all the Shariras have one or other Jvara in one or other degrees. And there is no question of an absolute freedom from this Jvara. It is impossible. That's the first thing. Second thing, that he is in a next point is a definition of anujvara. Since because of my identification with these three bodies, and thereby the identification with these three types of jvaras, problems of pertaining to the bodies, I will have a conclusion. What? I have a problem. Or I have got jvara. Means I have a problem. Well, this conclusion, the self-judgment, is called anujvara. That is called shoka, sorrow. Sorrow is this, I have a problem. So, sharira jvaram anu. It is anujvara hai. Anu means what? Paschat. What is Paschat? Anu. So what is that? So in keeping with the pains of the body, I have a judgment about myself. That's called Anujjara. And that is, Vedanta defines this Anujjara as a samsara. There is no other remedy for these three types of jvara. Temporary, well, jvara can go away, but you can reduce the intensity of the problems pertaining to any body, but you cannot be free from that. So there is no parihara for that. So then, well, we should not focus on that. We should not we should not try to find out permanently, we should not be finding the solution for the problems pertaining to any body. What are the problems we have discussed last time in 224, 225 and 226? Even Karana Sharira also has a jvara. Anyway, so Vedanta basically focuses on Anujjara. Vedanta focuses on correction of the self-judgment. Correction of the self-judgment is called Shoka Nivritti. I have a problem, I have a suffering, or I am a suffering. All this is called Shoka. There is suffering. But suffering that is called jvara, and that is at the level of a body. And that we should give it up. I mean, to find a solution for that. Keeping the body, keeping the mind, keeping the senses, etc., or even keeping a Karana Sharira free from problems is impossible. Impossible. If that is possible, then the prarabdha itself is, you are not experiencing prarabdha. But the bodies, well, belong to the prarabdha, and that Karana Sharira, of course, is a locus of all sanchita. And the subtle and gross both have come due to prarabdha, and therefore problems will be there. And therefore, this the first point what we saw is this, that these three shariras have one or other jvara. And second is basically this, I told you, is a definition of a Anujjara. Anyway, so we have to focus on Anujjara only. And that is an intellectual problem. It's a cognitive issue born of a delusion, adhyasa. And solution is, well, one has to educate oneself through Vedanta. So what is the solution? Well, I am not suffering due to jvara of the body. That's the solution. I am suffering due to the jvara of the body. You won't say even that. I am suffering. I have a problem. That is the problem actually. That is Anujjara. And the solution is, I am not suffering from jvara, is a solution. And this separation is in terms of understanding, changing patterns of thinking. That is the second point in general remarks. Vidyaranya's general remarks regarding jvara and Anujjara, in that we have seen two. Third, Vidyaranya conveyed other important message. See, the Chidabhasa, which is a avatar of this consciousness, well, does not have a jvara at all. It's of the nature of light. So ordinary Surya Prakasha itself is not afflicted by anything. Either it falls, Surya Prakasha, it falls in a drainage water, or it falls on a very dead body, which is totally rotten, or falls in a Ganges water, or falls in our all the pure water, drinkable water. Anywhere it falls, or it falls on a garbage, anywhere it falls, sunlight is not affected. Which sunlight? That reflected sunlight. In that reflected sunlight, you are seeing the garbage, you are seeing the drainage water, you are seeing everything. So that reflected sunlight itself is not affected by the medium. And therefore, so if ordinary Surya Prakasha is not afflicted by this elemental creation, even though it is also elemental, still, then this is not elemental Prakasha. Consciousness is not elemental Prakasha. It's a reflected consciousness also, therefore will not be affected by the medium bodies. That's what it is. So this is a very amazing thing he talks about. So, so and how to prove that? Well, if Chidabhasa has a Jvara, then we should count the fourth one also. So all the three bodies have three types of Jvara. And now we have to count the Jvara of the Chidabhasa also as a fourth group of Jvara. So do we have other set of problems other than these problems belong to three bodies? We should ask. No. So when we actually use a remedy for removing the Jvara of any body, well, Chidabhasa also becomes free. Means Chidabhasa has no issue of its own. Like, simple example. Like you have a fever. And that is a problem pertaining to the gross body. Right? And that is Jvara. Then, well, definitely you say, I have a fever. And you have taken a crocin. This is my understanding. You may have something else, okay? And therefore, it is crocin, Crowsin. Okay. So anyway, no, it's a Crosin or Ci, whatever. I mean, so if you take that remedy, and now you say, I don't have a fever. Fever belongs to this body, of course. And you say, I have a fever, then that definitely Chidabhasa also is there. And therefore, as even individual, you say, I don't have a fever. Means actually the fever, the Jvara belongs to the gross body, has been misunderstood as a fever of a Chidabhasa. Right? Jvara of the Chidabhasa. When you find a remedy for that, then you say, well, I am free from the problem. I am free from the suffering of this fever. Therefore, Chidabhasa itself has no issue. But also, that is what he says, Chidabhasa does not have any exclusive Jvara of its own, and therefore, here we have to use now a Kaimutika Nyaya. So, Chidabhasa api, even in this reflected consciousness, Jvara are not there. Then what to talk of the light, the consciousness? If reflected consciousness does not have a Jvara, where is a question of a Jvara of a Atma? So he says, Chidabhasa api, even in this reflected consciousness, prakasha eka svabhavatvam. Chidabhasa has a prakasha. Chidabhasa has a svabhava of a prakasha. What prakasha? Abhautika prakasha. Right? It's not belong to this elemental part. Evam eva drashtam Chidabhasa api prakasha eka svabhavatvam drashtam. Well, so even in this reflected consciousness, definitely it's just a consciousness which is not elemental, prakasha, eva drashtam, nacha itarat. Chidabhasa has no other nature, and therefore, definitely, no other nature means Chidabhasa does not have a legs, Chidabhasa does not have a kidney, Chidabhasa does not have a heart, Chidabhasa does not have a mind, okay? And therefore, definitely, no issue. No issue. Heart means heart attack, and kidney means this, stone issue, and then this. No issue at all. Chidabhasa is Chidabhasa. Prakasha eka svabhavatvam. It's just reflected consciousness, nothing else. And therefore, definitely, Chidabhasa itself has no issue. Then where is the question? This is Kaimutika Nyaya. Kimutaha. Then there is a question of a Atma Sakshi, which is free from all the problems. Anyway. And now he clarifies this Kaimutika Nyaya in verse 230. Chidabhasepya sambhavya jvara sakshinika katha evamapyekatam mene chidabhaso hyavidyaya. So, he says, Jvaraha Chidabhase api asambhavya. So, Jvaraha asambhavyaha. We have to, I think, add a visarga. Jvaraha Chidabhase api asambhavyaha. This asambhavyaha, sam plus bhudhatu is there, and so means sambhavati. But then this is basically causal. Sambhavayati. Sambhavayati means to make possible, etc. So, asambhavyaha is a potential passive participle. Are not possible. Jvaraha Chidabhase api asambhavyaha. Jvaras are not even remotely possible. Jvaras are not existent, let us say, uh, for the Chidabhasa. Then Sakshinika Katha. Then what to talk of this Sakshi? Sakshi Vishay, Sakshini, Vishay Saptami. Sakshinika Katha. Then what to talk with regards to this Sakshi? If Jvaras are not there in the reflection itself, then what to talk this original consciousness? Evamapi, so even Jvaraha Chidabhase api sambhavyaha sakshinika katha. Evamapi, even though this is the story, ekatam ene, Chidabhasa identify with these three bodies. Instead of claiming that I am a Sakshi, basically, I appear as a reflection. Chidabhasa should tell this. I appear as a reflection because of this medium. Actually, I am the original sun. Right? I am original sun. Or means I am the consciousness. Basically, I am Sakshi. He has to say that. Instead he says I am body. Chidabhasa can go on either side. Chidabhasa can claim three bodies. Chidabhasa can claim I am Chit. Right? That's what it is. It can claim, but it doesn't claim. So ekatam ene, ekatam mene. So Chidabhasa identifies with this Sharitram instead of a claiming Sakshi Sarup. And this mandhatu, so I just spoke wrongly ene, but it is mene. Mandhatu is there, means to consider, to believe. So he considered this ekatam. He identifies with this three bodies. And thereby he says what? And why it did like this? Avidyaya, all because of avidya. So, and why this, but why this issue has come? Avidya, of course, is there. So, then we say, avidya has twofold power, Avarana Shakti and Vikshepa Shakti, and that has created this problem. So, Chidabhasa says, I am basically body. So, that's a Vikshepa. I am a Jiva, individual, and which includes the three bodies. When he says I am individual, it includes the three bodies in the I. Is Asmat Pratyaya Vishaya. All this body, we have placed I sense in the body, all the three bodies. In the mind, in senses, in the gross body, in the causal body, everywhere we have I sense. So basically it is Idam Pratyaya Vishaya. This is a, is an object for Idam Pratyaya. For this cognition. You should tell this, but you should know. I say I. And therefore, definitely, Chidabhasa is Ekatam Mene. He considers these three bodies. He concludes, let's say, that I am three bodies. And then these pains which belong to the gross body, three bodies, they belong to me. And therefore I say I am suffering, I have a problem, etc. That's called Anuchara. So, Chidabhasa had an option to either to go with the reflecting medium or to go with the consciousness, but he voted for a wrong party. Anyway, verse 231. Sakshi satyatva madhyasya svenopete vapustraye tat sarvam vastavam sasya sarupamiti manyate. What is a further mischief? So the problem has actually worsened. First identify with the Sharira instead of identifying with the consciousness, Chidabhasa. I'm talking about Chidabhasa. And then first identify with the Sharira, then identify with the Jvaras, pains of the body, these three bodies, or problems of the three bodies. So, claiming as oneself. First identify with the bodies. You claim bodies as yourself. And then you claim the jvaras also of the body as yourself. So, and then basically I am Chit, which is Sat. I am the reality. I am only reality, but instead of, and that reality, of the Sakshi, I am shifting to these bodies and jvaras of the bodies. So they become real. Bodies become real. So basically bodies I superimpose upon myself, who is Chit. So, and that is the first thing. Then the jwaras of the bodies also I superimpose upon myself. That's the one thing. And then the satyatvam of this sakshi, actually I superimpose upon the body. Bodies are mithya. The jaras also are mithya, but they appear real. And therefore that real jvara, well, I take on to myself. So this is what is happening. So this is a problem. Pluck jvara from the sharira, pluck reality from the sakshi, and this, well, throw that jvara to that, throw that reality, well, to the jvara, and then you say, well, I am suffering from real jvara. I'm using this jvara because you know very well I'm suffering from a real problems. Means you say that I have a problem. Means you consider them as real. So this cooked up problem is called anujvara. And this is called samsara. Samsara exists only in this intellect, in our conclusion about ourselves. It does not exist anywhere in the world. Sakshi satyatvam adhyasya. Reality of the sakshi is transferred to vapustraye, in the three bodies, and you consider including jvaratraya, because bodies are, the jvaras are all there in the bodies, and therefore reality of the sakshi is transferred to the three bodies, and thereby reality is transferred to the three jvaras, three types of jvaras also. And what type of a sharitrayam? Svena upete, which who are endowed with this chidabhasa. Because chidabhasa, and well, if they are endowed with chidabhasa, then well, it's a abhasa. Abhasa means mithya. But basically, all become satyam. So when you say I am suffering, well, chidabhasa is definitely included. Tat sarvam vastavam manyate means they are all considered absolutely real. So the body, the reflection in the body, the jvara in the body, all become real. They appear real because basically sakshi is real. The reality of the sakshi is superimposed upon this body and also the jara of the body. And therefore you say, well, I have a real problem, or I have a problem. Means you consider it as a real. So tat sarvam vastavam manyate, they are all considered absolutely real. Swasya sarupam manyate, you consider them as your own nature. So a disease means a disease in the body is not a samsara. Vedanta, of course, never promises any solution for that. But once anujvara goes, well, I never claim myself to be samsari. So if you stop this self-judgment about yourself, that I am suffering, that's due to adhyasa. Well, of course, bodies are superimposed upon the self, and the reality of the self is superimposed upon the three bodies, which are mithya, and the jvaras of the body. And thereby, due to this confusion, well, you take the body as yourself, and you take the jvaras of the body as yourself, and thereby you have a conclusion that I am suffering. So that is there. And then, of course, once you understand you are a sakshi, then you can stand detached from this. Then definitely this kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam will be there as a role playing. Shariratrayam as a vyavaharika through Shariratrayam you do all the vyavahara. I want to explain this further, but you see what is happening actually, this we are discussing in Drisha Viveka, and I find it is very useful to discuss. That's how I am saying this. So Sakshi, basically from Sakshi alone this buddhi arises. Sakshi is Brahman, which is all pervading. And through Maya, of course. And as the buddhi arises, of course, buddhi is remaining non-separate buddhi arises. Buddhi comes and goes, that everyone's experience. I have not to say. Buddhi appears and disappears. That is our experience also. So as the buddhi appears, now remaining non-separate from this all-pervading consciousness, Sakshi, so buddhi occupies a part of the Sakshi, let us say. Occupied consciousness by the buddhi. The way The way this, if you know this, let's say a mirror is basically is never away from the space. So I can say the space is occupied by the mirror, definitely. Space, I mean, a mirror definitely occupies some space of this all pervading space. Or I can say space pervades the mirror. This is one thing, right? Or let us say mirror occupies a space. I say part, but you cannot make part of the space, you know very well. So therefore, even though there is a occupied space by the mirror, that occupied space is a total space. There is no division. Occupied space by mirror is a part of the total space. No, it's just one space in which you place a mirror, and their mirror is all the time non-separate from the this non-separate in terms of here it is in the space. So let's say, let's not use this. Mirror is all the time pervaded by this space. This is one thing. Second thing is the space is reflected in the mirror. That's the second thing. Yeah. So mirror has two spaces. One is occupied space, which is nothing but the original space, all pervading space, and also mirror has a reflected space. So same way, and in what is the difference between these two spaces? One is all pervading. Even before mirror is created, the space was there. That original space. Forget about original. Why I am using, I don't know. But this all pervading space, well, or the occupied space by mirror was there before also, before mirror has emerged. When mirror is there, it is there. And mirror gets destroyed totally. Still it will be there. So that space, na udeti, na astameti. It does not rise, it doesn't set. Right? It doesn't rise, it doesn't set. But the reflected space arises with the arising of mirror, and it gets destroyed if the mirror is destroyed. So same way here, buddhi is a mirror, and consciousness, all pervading consciousness, is space, like a space. So as the buddhi arises from this all pervading consciousness called sakshi, that buddhi occupies a consciousness we call occupied consciousness, which is nothing but the sakshi. They call it as a avachinna chaitanya. Avachinna chaitanya means was consciousness enclosed by buddhi or occupied by the buddhi. But the enclosed consciousness is the consciousness, sakshi, Brahman. Like enclosed space in the pot is the total space. There is nothing called enclosed space. We have already seen in Pancadasi earlier also, Ghatakasha, Mahakasha. All. Enclosed space is not a part of the space which is different from that all-pervading space. Pot space is different and all-pervading space is different. It's not so. Space cannot be divided, and therefore there is no question of inside pot is one type of space and outside pot is, which is all-pervading, is space is a different. Mahakasha is different. Ghatakasha is different. That is a delusion of a person. That's a delusion of a person. Even though a pot has occupied the space, really speaking, whole pot is in the space. Same way, this all-pervading consciousness, buddhi emerges from the all-pervading consciousness through Maya, where buddhi is totally pervaded by this consciousness, inside, outside. Just as the inside outside, in and through, let us say, not inside, outside, in and through this wave, what is there is just water. Same way, this basically the whole buddhi, which comes out of this consciousness, in and through everything is just consciousness. Just only it is an appearance. Buddhi is a simply incidental attribute of consciousness. We call it is name and form. Any creation is an incidental attribute to the Karanam. Yeah. Pot and clay. Really speaking, potness is an incidental attribute to the clay. It has no substantiality. Potness, even just clay was there 100 gram and you add this potness now, right? That's a creation. What is creation? Out of clay, what is created? Pot is created. But pot is created means what? Potness is created in the clay. That potness cannot add anything to the clay. 100 gram clay was there and now it is 100 gram. You give a 100 gram gold and you get all the ornaments. You feel the ornaments are adding up to the gold. It doesn't add anything. Anyway, basically, so buddhi is created. And that, so it's appearance of the same consciousness. Anyway, so in and through it is consciousness. And which consciousness, even though I use word avachinna chaitanyam, occupied consciousness, enclosed consciousness, really speaking it is Brahman. Okay, Sakshi. With respect to buddhi we call Sakshi, we know these words. We have seen this, then Sakshi and Brahman are not two things. Anyway, and then, but buddhi being what it is, like mirror, consciousness gets reflected also in the buddhi. And as the consciousness gets reflected in the buddhi, buddhi becomes conscious and becomes conscious of itself and says aham. The first thing it says aham. But it's that aham is only pertaining to the buddhi. Aham sense in the buddhi, a limited sense. And that is called ahankara. That's called ahankara. That is called pramata, the knower. That's a basic thing. That is called vijnanamaya. Yeah. And then part of that buddhi, the whole buddhi has become now ahankara, means conscious, and says aham. And in entire buddhi there is I sense. In that buddhi, pertaining to a particular sense organ, I mean the part of that buddhi through particular sense organ, that's better, goes out. Part of it. Whole buddhi doesn't go out. Whole buddhi is situated in this heart. Whole buddhi goes out means what? So part of the buddhi, part of antakarana goes out, contact the sense object, respective sense object, by which passage it goes, it depends upon that. If it goes through the eyes, the mind, part of the mind which goes through that eyes will contact color and form, will have and acquire a thought form. That thought form definitely occurs here, and that thought form is illumined by this ahankara, the pramata. That thought form is called pramanam. In other words, it's called manomaya. And so one antakarana itself, pramata, pramanam. But what is prameyam? That object which is object of knowledge which is outside is called prameyam. So this is a triad. Definitely not just buddhi. That aham which has arisen in this buddhi, that conscious mind, that ahankara pervades the other parts of the sukshma sharira. So in senses also you have eye sense. The Chidabhasa pervades everywhere, entire Sukshma Sharira. And also you will have an eye sense in eyes also, not just buddhi. The Chidabhasa only, which is formed, in this buddhi, pervades the other parts of the Sukshma Sharira also. And so in the prana you have eye sense, in the mind you have, in the senses you have eye sense, etc. In the karmendriya you have eye sense, in the jnanendriyas you have eye sense, both the things. And then, so you are, identified through the buddhi, through the entire subtle body. And then through the subtle body, you identified through the gross body. So you have an eye sense up to dermis. So this is ultimately, this avachinna chaitanyam, the sakshi, definitely through Chidabhasa identifies. Through all the three shariras. Karana Sharira, of course it is there. That is, we should not have to say about it. And so due to identification with this organs of action, now same ahankara, which is basically the pramata vijnanamaya. Now the same ahankara, through identification with the organs of action, becomes doer, karta. Same pramata, ahankara, through the sense organs, gains knowledge of various objects of the world and experiences sukham and dukkham. Then the same pramata has been converted into bhokta. That's it. So basically the consciousness getting reflected in the buddhi, the subtle body, and ahankara has arisen, and that ahankara, through identification with the different upadhis called organs of action, becomes karta, through just buddhi becomes pramata, through the senses becomes bhokta. And when I am bhokta ahankara, then that vritti arises, that sukha dukkha vritti, sukhakar vritti, dukkhakar, what is called bhoga. And the object which you have experienced outside, that's called bhogyam. Bhokta, bhoga vritti, bhogyam. Pramata, pramana vritti, prameyam. And then through organs of action, same ahankara now, who is called karta, and through karmendriya and the mind becomes karanam, both, just not karmendriya and mind both, becomes karanam, and then karma, which is some object of action. And therefore this is how karta karma karanam, pramata pramanam prameyam, bhokta bhogyam bhogaha, this is how it arises, is all nothing but this Chidabhasa ultimately. Not original, the chit. Sakshi is, and that is there. So the I sense arises. Why I am saying this is actually, we should have discussed this before. So the I basically is a mixture of this Chidabhasa, ahankara, and also that occupied consciousness. Both are there in the buddhi. But instead of claiming that I am a Sakshi, is already obtained in the buddhi, I claim as a Chidabhasa, ahankara. Actually it's a mixture. Why? Because Chidabhasa is impossible without this consciousness, and therefore definitely I is a mixture here, but I, due to self-ignorance, not knowing that I am Sakshi, I claim as buddhi as a myself. I should not claim. Why? Because it is drishyam. It is drishyam, it is not drik. It is not consciousness. Buddhi is jadam. If you drop the buddhi, you will drop ahankara also, because ahankara has arisen. The I sense has arisen, well, when the consciousness gets reflected in the buddhi, and thereby I say I am pramata, etc., through buddhi upadhi. But now you say, well, that I am not buddhi, etc., well, then you are no more ahankara also. Because ahankara has this chidabhasa plus this buddhi. This kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam, pramatrutvam belongs to buddhi. But without reflected consciousness, you won't say I am karta. Definitely requires a reflected consciousness. And therefore, with the blessing of this chidabhasa, well, kartrutvam, bhoktrutvam, pramatrutvam becomes I am karta, etc. So formation of a chidabhasa due to this enclosed consciousness, sakshi chaitanyam, while it is responsible for arising of a ahankara. Thereby you claim buddhi, etc., and the other parts also as oneself. And therefore ultimately I, the sakshi, is free from this three bodies, distinct from three bodies, and the suffering or problems pertaining to three types of bodies. And instead of claiming I am sakshi, if you claim I am chidabhasa, then definitely you are going along with the medium buddhi, etc. And because when you say chidabhasa, definitely chidabhasa is non-separate from the buddhi, then definitely you are claiming buddhi also as yourself. And therefore, well, so then you will say, I am a sufferer, I have a problem, I have a pain, I have a fever, I am angry, etc., etc. All problems belong to the mind, also belongs to you. All the problems belong to the gross body, belongs to you. And this is how it is happening. This I wanted to discuss this. But this thing will continue. Chidabhasa formation will be there so long the buddhi, etc., will be there. And buddhi, etc., will be there so long as prarabdha will be there. So long as bhoktrutvam will be there, kartrutvam will be there, pramatrutvam will be there. But that has become now mithya for the person who knows I am sakshi. And therefore, in a vyavahara, well, I will say that, well, I am a bhokta, etc. So that has been told here. 232. एतस्मिन् भ्रान्तिकालेयं शरीरेषु ज्वरत्स्वथ स्वयमेव ज्वरामीति मन्यते हि कुटुम्बिवत्. So etasmin bhrantikale, well, as long as intellect has, this problem, well, means this confusion, well, that I am chidabhasaha shariresu jvaratsu satsu. When these three bodies go through the varieties of this jvara, which kind of jvara? 224, 225 and 226. Swayam eva jvarami. Actually, chidabhasa is going through these three jvaras, but then I also go through jvara, I say. We have already seen chidabhasa does not have a jvara at all, but he is discussing. If it is a bhranti, chidabhasa also does not have any jvara. But if you consider ourselves as a chidabhasa, which is non-separate from this buddhi, etc., means the three bodies, ultimately, because chidabhasa pervades to even the gross body also. That is how, even though this is just by the way, I'm again, putting a hold on this, what I'm discussing right now. But therefore, if the consciousness, sakshi does, even though sakshi being all pervading, pervades the gross body, but sakshi cannot make the body conscious. That's the thing. Sakshi cannot make body conscious. Sakshi can make buddhi conscious. Sakshi can make sukshma sharira conscious. That's how your senses are conscious. Pranas are conscious. Mind is conscious. But sakshi cannot make, even sakshi is all pervading, but cannot make gross body conscious. No. It can't. If sakshi can make a gross body conscious, then definitely there will not be a dead body. Naturally. Dead body means insentient. Body is sentient right now, conscious. Then your consciousness, Brahman, is all pervading. Then it pervades the gross body. It pervades the gross body. Then why this is not conscious? That's what people are asking question. If you say consciousness, Brahman is the Jagat Karanam, then everything should be conscious. Because Karya Guna, Karana Gunaha Karya Anuvartante. Whatever the property of the Karanam will inhere into the Karyam. If you make a shirt of the cotton, the whole shirt will have cottonness. So if Brahman is basically Jagat Karanam, then everything, Brahman being consciousness, well, ultimately everything should be conscious, everything should be sentient. But in world there are majority of things inert. Then we say a Sat Rupena, in form of existence. Yeah? The existence of any name and form is Brahman. That's what Mithya is. Independent existence, name and form, means it is real creation. Anything which exists independently is Satyam. Anything which exists with a borrowed existence, that is Mithya. And therefore pot does not have a independent existence other than the clay. And therefore entire creation, you say space is, that isness is Brahman. We call Sat. That's how Chandogya talks about Sadeva Sumidamagra Asit Ekameva Dvitiyam. So this entire creation was Sat. So they talk about Brahman as a Jagat Karanam in form of Sat. In fact, existence pervades, really speaking. To say cause of the creation, rather than consciousness, we should say Sat. That's what it is. Because the very space is, you say. That's it. Everything is in space. That also has existence. Existence is one thing which pervades everything. Everything is. And therefore, Karana alone pervades the Karyam, while existence pervades the entire Jagat. And therefore, Sat is Jagat Karanam. And that Sat is consciousness, Chit. From where you have brought, that is what Tattvamasi is. Tat means that Jagat Karanam, Brahman, which is in the form of Sat, is none other than the consciousness. Tvam. You are conscious, there is no doubt about it. To say that I am inert also you require consciousness, therefore you are a consciousness. There is no issue. So that existence is consciousness, that is Mahavakya. Anyway, this is by the way, but what I was telling is, this, yeah. So the body, basically, body is inert and it appears conscious, not due to that, that Sakshi Chaitanya occupied consciousness, enclosed consciousness. No. It's due to reflected consciousness. It's due to reflected. Chidabhasa pervades. And that is why when the subtle body, the buddhi leaves the gross body, when the karma is over, body becomes inert. Even though all pervading Sakshi is still there, the very existence of the dead body is Brahman, but it is not sentient. It is not sentient. The sentience is through Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa is through subtle body. That's the thing. And in the creation, there are gross objects which contain even gross bodies, let us say, which contain Sukshma Sharira. There are gross bodies, objects which do not contain Sukshma Sharira. And therefore, they appear inert. They are inert. These are conscious, sentient. Sentiency, insentiency is due to Sukshma Sharira. Either a gross, either a gross body like us of a human being or a gross stone, etc., all are pervaded by still Brahman in form of existence. And therefore, well, so then, well, Swami, shall we think that this Brahman has three aspects? Sat aspect goes like this, and then consciousness aspect goes like this, and Ananda goes somewhere else. There are not three aspects. Sat is Chit, Chit is Ananda. Then where the Sat is, there the Chit is, yeah. Where the Sat is, there the Chit is, absolutely. Then why it is not conscious? That's what I'm telling you. The consciousness, even though it is there, can't manifest because the medium is not there. Clear now? I think it is clear to you, but I wanted to discuss in terms of this. So this consciousness, basically the Sakshi, cannot have any jvara, much less Chidabhasa has any jvara. Even though Chidabhasa pervades, but it is a reflected consciousness which definitely it's a form of like a light. That's how I gave example of a sunlight. A reflected sunlight is not polluted, even though it lights up the polluted water. In the light of this reflected light, in reflected light only you are seeing that polluted water. Yeah, that only comes to you. You are seeing a reflected light which has come through that medium called polluted water. So sunlight falls on that and gets reflected and comes to your eyes, and there you are seeing now. But that reflected light, sunlight also is not polluted by that, even though it has come through that medium of polluted water. No. So Chidabhasa also is not polluted. Chidabhasa also does not have any problem. And therefore, we should ban this statement, I am having problem. This one thing should not be there. I am having problem. Then what should have? We'll discuss. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.